Hello my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel. If you're back, if you are new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna and I have another true crime case for you today. Just my usual disclaimer, this is all information that I have found online that I've compiled into a video for educational and entertainment purposes. Today I'm going to be telling you the story of Ronnie O'Neal and how he attempted to murder his whole family. This has been in the news like crazy lately, so I'm gonna kind of give you the rundown. I'm gonna tell you what happened, I'm gonna tell you about the trial, and then I'm gonna tell you my thoughts on everything, and I hope that you decide to stay a while. Thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get started. Kenyatta Barron and Ronnie O'Neal had been together for quite some time at the time that this case took place in 2018. They had 2 children between them, both of which were named after Ronnie. Their daughter was named Ronivia and their son was also named Ronnie. And they had a pretty rocky relationship. There was good times, there were bad times, but there were a lot of bad times, and Ronnie did have a child with a woman that was not Kenyatta throughout the course of their relationship at some point. So there was definitely tension between Kenyatta and this other woman. They pretty much never got along, which is understandable. But Ronnie, let's just say he wasn't the best partner to Kenyatta. Kenyatta was 33 at the time, and she was a beautiful woman. Like, she was so smart, she was beautiful, and she was described to be a kind, gentle soul who would have done anything for her children. She was a mother above all else. She believed in God. She was a devout mother. That's how everyone describes her. She was just a sweetheart, and being a mother came natural to her, and that was what she put above all else. And she was just a really loving and caring person who tried to see the best in Ronnie. She named her children after him, and she really was devoted to hopefully trying to make their relationship work in some way. Ronnie O'Neal was 29 at the time that this case took place in 2018, and he had mixed reviews. So there were people who said that he divulged to them that he had demons that he was fighting, that he was kind of just always on edge. He wasn't the most calm and stable person, and his relationship with Kenyatta was visibly not good to everyone around them. Neighbors would hear them fighting, would see them fighting. Like, things just didn't seem like they were going well between the two of them because of whatever instability that Ronnie had going on with him. And on March 18th of 2018, their normal arguments that they would have, one of these arguments actually ended up in absolute catastrophe. So the two of them are fighting, and this fight is getting pretty explosive, and little Ronnie hears them arguing, so he comes out of his room just to see what's going on and to make sure that his mom is okay. And Kenyatta tells him, look baby, just go back in your room. Mommy's okay, go ahead back in your room, me and daddy are just talking. And of course they're not just talking, they're having a huge argument, and Ronnie at this point Big Ronnie has a shotgun in his hand. And for those of you who may not know, a shotgun is one of those long guns. It's not one of the little handguns. He has a large gun in his hand and he's waving it around, and Kenyatta at this point is fearing for her life. So she runs into a closet inside of the home and decides to call 911. Luckily she was able to get a phone and get to the closet, but Ronnie is literally right behind her. He chases her into the room, and on the other side of the closet door, shoots through the door and hits her in the arm. At this point, Kenyatta has already called 911, and the operator can hear her screaming, trying to calm Ronnie down. She's like, look, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. She keeps saying that she's sorry. And the operator can hear Ronnie in the background saying Allah Akbar, which basically means God is great. And it's chaos, right? It's absolute chaos. But Kenyatta is actually able to, at some point, Ronnie must have stepped away from the closet. She's able to get out of the closet and runs into the front yard. Of course, he's right there behind her. He's running after her, and he starts beating her with the shotgun. And she was able to actually get far enough that she was in a neighbor's front yard while this is all happening. So there are people who are seeing this happen, at least one neighbor that actually testified against Ronnie, and he is beating her with this handgun to the point that it literally breaks. It bends. The steel long neck of the gun is bent, and he beats her to death essentially. And she's laying there in the front yard of the neighbor's house. And what does Ronnie do? He goes back inside, and their two children, Ronivia and Ronnie Jr., are inside of the house. He takes an axe and he kills Ronivia with this axe. And this part just makes me so sad because she could not fight against her father or run, even if she wanted to, because she actually suffered from cerebral palsy, which impacted her ability it just impacted everything, her speech, her movement. So she had absolutely no chance of even running away when she was afraid. But he takes his axe, he hits her in the back, he hits her in the head, and she dies. Then who was left? Ronnie Jr. Big Ronnie takes a knife, he stabs Ronnie Jr. in the chest, in the neck, in the arms, and he believes that this has killed him. So he then puts him next to his sister, sets both of them on fire, and sets the house on fire. Now right around the same time that Kenyatta actually called 911, Ronnie called 911. And in my opinion, this is just to kind of set up the scene to make it look like something that it was not. What he says on this 911 call is that his girlfriend was taken over by a white demon and tried to kill him, so he had to kill her, essentially, is what he's saying, basically setting up his defense in advance. And he doesn't leave the house. He waits at the house. He knows police are on the way. He waits. When they get there, he is non-compliant. He isn't physical with the police, but he's non-compliant. He's resisting arrest without force. Does that make sense? So he's just not listening to what they're saying, basically. But the paramedics get there. They see Kenyatta laying in the front yard, and she is just visibly, at this point, deceased, unfortunately. But they see a bright light shining from inside the house. Around the same time, Ronnie Jr. comes walking out of the house, who Big Ronnie actually thought was dead. And Ronnie Jr. says, "My dad shot my mom." That's the first thing that he said to police, which is just so heartbreaking. But when the police and the paramedics see that there's a fire going on inside the house, they realize that they have to go inside. There might be someone else inside. And of course, they find the daughter laying there, who was clearly dead. They said that there was so much blood all over the place. Big Ronnie had blood all over his clothing. There was blood, so much blood on the floor that they were slipping and sliding before they even came to put out the fire with water. There was blood literally everywhere. And the first responders who were on the scene, some of them said that it was such a horrific scene that before they could even do anything, after they tried to render aid, they just started crying because it was just so heartbreaking to see something of this magnitude. They're finally able to get Ronnie into custody after tasing him, and he is arrested on murder and attempted murder charges, and this is back again in 2018. His trial just happened, which is why this is gaining so much attention now, and the news and the media just happened in the last 3 weeks, the entire trial from start to finish. And part of the reason that so many people want to know what's going on with this case and this trial is because what did this idiot do? He decides to represent himself in court, which is 100% you're right. However, it's just not the smartest idea to represent yourself, especially in a murder trial where the death penalty is a possibility. But nevertheless, he decides to represent himself. And oh my goodness, they don't want me to live today. There are actually mixed reviews. There are some people who say that he did a really good job representing himself, and there are other people who think that he just looked like a complete clown. I'm closer to the clown side, but I also think that he did make some good arguments. He did use logic and reason in some of his arguments, not all of them. But the biggest issue that I had with his defense was that he yelled the entire time. He yelled at the jury. He yelled at the media. He yelled at the prosecution. The only person I didn't see him yell at was the judge because he knew better. He was literally yelling this entire time. His opening statement is just supposed to be where a lawyer says, "We believe the evidence will show you today such and such and such and such." He comes out there, he says that, but he also says a whole bunch of other stuff, and he's yelling at the top of his lungs. So not only does this, it makes it hard to follow, because when someone's yelling, I just tune out. I can't listen to loud noises. Loud noises, I don't like vacuums. The only thing I can listen to loud is music, and that's sometimes. I would have zoned out from the first second. But it just makes him look like he's unstable. It makes him look like maybe he shouldn't be representing himself. But based on some of the arguments that he did make and some of the things that he drew conclusions on, it was clear that he was of sound mind. He knew what was going on. He was aware that he was in a trial. He was aware that he was on trial for murder. He was aware of all of that. But the tad bit of unstable just thrown in there, it was too distracting for me personally. But I have watched videos on YouTube of actual lawyers reviewing how he defended himself and how well he did, and some of them say for someone who defends himself, he actually did a pretty decent job.
The evidence is going to show that we are under some of the most vicious fabricating, fictitious government you ever seen.
Ronnie's main arguments were that he acted in self-defense. So he tried to set the scene, like I said, back in 2018 when this was all happening, when he realized that Kenyatta was already calling the police. He then called the police. So he basically is trying to set the scene that he acted in self-defense. That's his first thing. His second thing is that police tampered with evidence. There's something about his 911 call that he feels was not accurate. The prosecution is saying that he called 911 after Kenyatta called 911. But what Ronnie is saying is, no, we basically made the calls at the same exact time. He also had an issue with the speed at which the 911 call was played, and he feels that that is proof that they tampered with it, and he questions why they didn't play it at the normal speed. Okay? Two things, I can actually understand why someone would be concerned about that. If I'm on trial for something, I want everything to be represented accurately, so I can understand how maybe he could get into the jury's head with that a little bit. The third thing that stood out to me is that he insisted that his son told multiple stories throughout the course of his trial. So his son told basically that he saw, at first he said that he saw his dad shoot his mom and that he was in the room, and then second he said that he didn't see it but he heard everything. So again, something that is, I can understand why he would add that in as an argument, and I can see how that would affect the jury's ability to make a decision as far as if he were found guilty or innocent. If all of the facts of the trial are not being presented correctly, or if there's changes in stories, fair for him to add that in. But what was not appropriate, in my civilian opinion, I don't know anything about the court of law, but what just seemed really inappropriate to me was that he was able to question his son. So his son was 8 years old at the time that this happened. Today he is 11 years old. He was the prosecution's star witness. Understandably so, right? He's the only person who survived this horrific incident. What I don't think should have been allowed to happen was for Ronnie to be able to question his son about the night that his mother and his sister were murdered. The amount of trauma that this boy is probably already experiencing is astronomical. So then for him to come and have his integrity questioned by his father, someone he was supposed to be able to trust. So not only is he being forced to relive this entire thing in front of a bunch of people, in front of the man who committed this horrendous act against him and his mother and his sister, he's also being questioned. And as an 11-year-old who saw something when you were 8, you might have a great memory, but you are more inclined to question what you saw and if what you're saying is true, if someone is implying that what you're saying is not true. So the amount of trauma that he is experiencing is just crazy to me that it was allowed, but I guess it makes sense, because if the defense lawyers would have questioned him, I wouldn't feel this type of way. But because he defended himself and was able to do something so horrendous and then question the only witness who was left, who happened to be his son, who's not even a teenager yet, it's just heartbreaking. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. But what I can say is that little Ronnie held it down. He didn't come up there and sway. He didn't come up there and say, oh, no, like, he was honest. Big Ronnie asked him, did you see me shoot your mother? He said no. He said, did you see me hit your mother? He said no. But what he did ask him was, did I hurt you that night? And little Ronnie said, yes. Big Ronnie said, how did I hurt you that night? And little Ronnie said, you stabbed me. And it was just so surreal in that moment, and I'm glad that he didn't back down, because as an 11-year-old, I don't know, I might have ran away. I would not want to be in that situation. But he stood his ground, and it just made me cringe when they first, I guess, saw each other. It was all done virtually. The son wasn't actually in the courtroom. When Ronnie O'Neal saw his son, I guess, on the screen, he said, how you doing? It's good to see you. And little Ronnie said, it's good to see you too. And I know it's just a formality, but it just doesn't seem fair that this little boy would have to be put through something like this. This isn't the first trial where I've seen a child get put on the stand, but this is the first trial where I've seen a child get put on the stand and have to testify against their own parent who so happened to murder their mother and their sister. So that part has people up in arms. It has people frustrated. It has people passionate about this case, which I completely understand, because I feel the exact same way. I don't think it should have happened, but I digress. Let's keep going. Ronnie O'Neal was found guilty of murder and attempted murder, and he is going to be serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. He did not receive the death penalty, which some of the jurors, I don't know if it was an alternate juror, but there was someone who was on the jury, either as an actual juror or an alternate juror, who said that they would have voted for the death penalty if they could. But he was not granted, I guess he was granted, because he isn't facing the death penalty, but he will be serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. And I don't know about prison, but I don't know if he's gonna last very long in there, because one thing I've heard is that people don't like men who hurt women and who hurt children. So I don't know how good of a time he's gonna be having in there, but that's none of my business. One of the bright sides about all of this is that little Ronnie was adopted by one of the detectives, actually one of the lead detectives on this case. So he does have a new home. He does have a new family now. Something that I wonder about, not that I question, but I do wonder about, is why Kenyatta's family wasn't granted custody of little Ronnie. Like, what were the reasons behind that? Kenyatta's family has come out and been very vocal about the fact that they are sad that they won't have the opportunity to see their grandson, that they probably won't have much of a relationship with him the way that they would like to. And I just wonder, like, what caused that to be the final result for his custody as opposed to family. It's just something to think about. But Kenyatta's family is, of course, still grieving the loss. It has been 3 years, but that is no time compared to the horrible loss of losing a loved one. So I can only imagine what they're still going through to this day, especially to see this man come out and make such a mockery of his girlfriend and his daughter's life. It's offensive, and if I were in that courtroom, I don't know, I might have wanted to throw a couple bows, but they are, like I said, still grieving the loss of Kenyatta, and I would imagine that they will be doing so for quite some time. To be honest with you, I don't have many thoughts about this case. I feel like it's disgusting, it's horrible, it's just like that's it. It's disgusting and it's horrible, and that's my thought. Like, that's really all it comes down to. And my main concern is the long-term impact that this will have on little Ronnie, and how he will look back on this situation in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. How long will this impact him? I'm sure when he's an adult, this will still impact him. Things from everyone's childhood impact them, whether consciously or subconsciously. So for something of this magnitude to happen to him at such a young age, and then to be drugged through it for as long as he has, for 3 years of his childhood, which are supposed to be the happiest years of your life, it's just, I can't imagine, you know, the amount of relearning to love and to trust and to believe in someone. Because those first years, that's when you learn how to love and to trust someone. Your parents are supposed to be those two that you love and you trust no matter what. And that was snatched away from him in a blink of an eye. So his perception of just human to human relationships, whether it be family or romantic or platonic relationships, will forever be jaded. His view of that will forever be jaded, forever will be impacted because of this disgusting act by his father. So I just keep him in my thoughts, and that's my main concern at the end of all of this. But be sure to let me know what you think about this in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for joining me today. And you know what I'm gonna say, if you made it this far, you are loyal. You really are, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is when you watch this video, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Peace.